Now I'm very glad that Peter Levitoff will introduce our speaker for the evening.
Thanks, Bob, and good evening. The series started, this is the fourth in this year's series, and been noticing that year after year we start out with about 100, 120 people, and we start losing people. So we appreciate you sticking with it. Last week we had the Oscars that were on television at the same time, and the week before that we had a Sunday snow. So we're really glad that you're here. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. First, I'll tell you his name as it really is, which is Sergio Wals, but he's anglicized his name because he's been in the United States as a graduate student and as a faculty member, so he goes by Sergio Wals. Not exactly the same, and I'll call him Sergio. He's an assistant professor of political science at the university, and he's been here since the fall of 2009, and that's when I met him. He was educated with his first degree in Mexico, a licenciatura degree in political science from the Technical Autonomous Institute of Mexico. And then he went to the University of Illinois, where he earned his master's and his doctorate. His doctoral dissertation on immigrants' political suitcases, a theory of imported socialization, won the University of Illinois Outstanding Dissertation Award. His field is political behavior and also race and ethnicity. And his work actually attempts to explain, this is his recent work, attempts to explain how immigrants' pre-migration political dispositions and experiences affect those individuals' political assimilations, attitudes, and behavior once they're in the U.S. And I think that I've seen the slides ahead of time, and I think that in the course of this lecture, you'll hear how he weaves that into his discussion of migration from Mexico and Central America. Sergio is an outstanding teacher. He won one of the awards as an Outstanding Teacher Award from the College of Arts and Sciences at the university. He won an award by the Latino American Commission for the state of Nebraska. And he also has published in a number of peer-reviewed journals, such as the Journal of Politics, the Journal of Research and Personality, Political Communication, Political Research Quarterly, Electoral Studies, Debates, and Democratization. One thing which is not part of his professional vita, but which I'll tell you, is that on the side, he plays the guitar and he sings children's songs. And he actually has a DVD out there, which is not being sold at the intermission, but it's called "Michael Closed the Bathroom Door." And with that, I'll turn the program over to Professor Wals.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, for that very nice introduction, and for putting out the secret, as my students say. Every now and then I get for the first time in front of a classroom here at the University of Nebraska, and a student will raise shyly his or her hand and say, "Do you mind if I tell everybody what I learned about you?" And I'm like, it depends. I'm a very private person. I don't share these sort of things with anyone. So where do you learn? All I need to do is Google, and it turns out you recorded a children's album and it's available on iTunes. I'm like, clearly panned out, right? So it's just a hobby, just so we're clear on that. I haven't actually played since I joined the faculty. I've been busy getting tenure, and if things work out this August, I should become an associate, but that's the most important thing thus far. So before I begin, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you some time today. I've been given the opportunity to speak in front of different audiences around Nebraska. It all started around March of 2011 on similar topics. And I feel very, very blessed, very privileged to have this opportunity. Do we need, yes, 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 sir. Perfect. This way, we don't blame it on the accent. So I've been very privileged, and I feel really happy to be here. Congratulations on this outstanding effort. It's decades long, and I appreciate to be a part of the lineup this year. I'll try to make it engaging can be, hopefully. I tell that to my students, and every now and then they fall asleep. But I'm going to try. It's a Sunday evening, and you're here. So here's what I'm going to try to do. I was asked to talk about immigration from Mexico and Central America, and to be honest, I can talk about a bunch of facts, and it wouldn't be as entertaining. I would rather give you a little bit of a theoretical perspective at the beginning, then a few facts. Then I definitely want to weave a little bit of my research into it, and then end up with some kind of reflection. Along the way, I hope to be humorous enough to keep you awake and attentive, but I'm not going to push the boundaries. My chair just told me when we got the letter from the dean, look, this is almost a done deal, lay low. So, let me start by a quote from two great scholars in the United States, Cortes and Rumbaugh, depending upon the pronunciation you want to take on it. Immigrants do not come to escape perennial unemployment or destitution in their homeland. Most undertake the journey instead to attain the dream of a new lifestyle that has reached their countries, but that it is impossible to fulfill in them. These authors actually turn immigration upside down when bringing this perspective. Most of the time we tend to think that most immigrants come for economic reasons. That is, in a way, true. The economic motive is still the predominant motive. But I usually tell audiences that that's only partially true. If you think about it, it's not just the money for the money's sake. It's about living the American dream. It's about paving the road for newer generations by sacrificing your own. In a way, I allow myself every now and then to interject some of my own personal experiences to it, because at the end of the day, I'm not only a scholar that attends to this matter, I'm an immigrant myself. As Peter said, I arrived in the United States in August of 2004. I was an international student. I've been here almost 11 years. I call the United States home. My parents get a little shaky when I say that. When I say America is my home, they look at me funny. And I don't mean to, break their hearts, but it is what it is. I'm not a citizen yet, because I've been lawfully following, and Peter can attest to that, every single step along the way. And I'll finally be eligible for citizenship this year, after almost 11 years here. So, some people have asked me, why do you come? I mean, you had a good degree, I actually had really good employment over there. I don't want to say this too loud, because then people think I'm making waves. I actually made more money in my last job in Mexico City than currently as a professor at the University of Nebraska. And that was before I got my advanced degrees. But of course, some people will disagree that, and they'll say that we get paid too much. I don't know. I just know I'm making less money. So, it's not just about the economic motive, but about the lifestyle. And I think there's something about it, and I'll come back to it a little later. Now, here's where the reflection, I want to start it and then come full circle towards the end. People tend to ask me, students to begin with, and because of this I actually generated a new class at the University of Nebraska called Immigration and Politics that has been really well attended since. They ask me, why does immigration become this hot button issue so easily? And I tend to say, well, look, this is not new. It is hot. And it tends to get hotter right around campaigns. But it's not new. It's far from new. And the dynamics of the thing have been fairly consistent. I would say even for centuries now. Of course, when some reporters have come to me and I say this, I don't make the news because I'm just stealing the soundbite. I'm telling them, there's nothing new under the sun. But in my opinion, the answer is twofold. Immigration is not a problem in and of itself. And people are welcome to disagree with me, but from an academic standpoint, immigration in and of itself is not a problem. Strategic politicians, on the other hand, problematize that. And it can be from any angle. It can be from the left, it can be from the right. I'm as neutral as can get on this one. And the reason for that is because immigration offers a continuous opportunity to fuel us versus them rhetoric. Us versus them rhetoric is the very bread and butter of politics. Now, who's us, who's them, that depends on the times and the context. But it's the easiest way to have people going. And, it offers plenty of opportunities for that. And that's why immigration becomes such an easy target for generating division. Now, there's no doubt immigration flows have the potential to reconfigure the ethnic makeup of any given society. I'll give you a few facts along this way in just a second. But for now, it's important to recognize now, is there something to it? Yes. As far as the ethnic makeup of any given society, immigration flows, constant immigration flows, will reshape it. Immigration, because of that, can trigger dormant and further ingrained active anti-immigration sentiments, and these can be very vicious. And I tend to warn my audiences. Here's the problem. Like, I get invited to talks, and I literally preach to the choir. No pun intended here. Because the people that go there, they're generally interested. They're people that, for the most part, don't have these anti-immigration sentiments. They want to know what they can do to understand, what they can do to help. But the reality is that even the slightest movement in trends will be seen as an opportunity among certain politicians to strategically exploit that. Now, another reason is because the public is seen, us, the audiences, we are seen as fertile soil where politicians cultivate and harvest from us versus them rhetoric. Usually they play on our fears. Fear is very human. And fear of the unknown is very human. Now, it's hard to say that openly because then we border politically incorrect things. But fear of the unknown is a very human feeling. And politicians know that, and they will go after that. Immigration as a political cleavage by which society is divided into an in-group, the natives, and an out-group, the foreign-born, is a very, very short-term successful strategy. I don't recommend it, but of course I'm not paid the big bucks to get people into offices. But I would recommend it because it's very effective in the short term, but it lays the groundwork for really bad feelings in the long run. Unfortunately, different states, our own, every now and then sees examples like this. But as my church said, lay low. Lay low. Okay, so let me get to some fun facts. I told you a little bit of why it gets hot, right? Okay, now let's see some of the fun facts around this. And by the end of the 19th century, the first generation immigrant population of the United States accounted for almost 15%. In other words, 15 out of every 100 people living in the United States in 1899 was foreign born. So how does that compare to our current situation, right? Because people will say like, wow, that was at the end of the 19th century. It gotta be really, really bad today. Well, it depends where you live. Your perceptions might change. If you live in Lexington, Nebraska, you're probably thinking that's way low. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, by 2010, the foreign-born population in the United States had increased to 36.7 million, roughly 12% of the total. So there's more immigrants in raw numbers, but proportion-wise, at least as of 2010, we're not quite at the level we were at the end of the 19th century. That's very interesting, right? Because when we talk about population changes, usually we want to talk about proportions. Because in raw numbers we know, well, we're more human beings on the planet than had ever been. But proportion-wise, that's what we would like to take a look at. By the way, fun fact, 2010 was a census where the foreign-born question was dropped. So they have an estimation, but the foreign-born question, it's, I don't know if it's going to come back in 2020, but 2010 wasn't there. Now, another fun fact. Nebraska is among the top 10 states with the fastest growing foreign-born population. Aha, aha. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Now we're getting to a point where, oh, so maybe that's why some politicians have taken on this. And sure, we're right there. Let me give you another fun fact that I didn't put there, just because I love looking at the faces of my audiences when I bomb this one on you. 8 out of those 10 are considered red states. Ah, I not go big red as in Nebraska. You know what I'm talking about. But I need to lay low. So, that's gonna get fun in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's kind of getting there, but you have only seen the tip of the iceberg. This is one of the reasons I wanted to come to Nebraska. Yes, folks. You can ask people. I did go on the market. I'm a big believer on the free market. And the way the academia works in the United States, you go on the market. And then you get job interviews. If you're lucky, I got 8 of those. But when people asked me where I wanted to go, I said I want to go to Nebraska. And people laughed at me. No, they did. I'm being honest. Why? I'm like, why not? I really wanted to be a Cornhusker, so when I really wanted to. So when I got my letter of offer from the Department of Political Science, I literally have a photograph to prove it. My best friend had already given me a very nice Nebraska sweatshirt. So I put it on, I signed the letter, and I took a photograph as if it was signing day. I was as proud as I'm prouder even now, but all I'm saying is I wanted to be here. And one of the reasons academically was I knew this was going on. And this was going to be one of those states that needed educated voices, neutral voices that could help us bridge some gaps. And I've always said this to my students. If I wanted to be in politics, I would have stayed in Mexico. I was 28 years old. I had already served for the Office of the President. I had already served for the Undersecretary of the Federal Budget. And I had been told to just keep working a little bit, and at age 30, 31, I could be on one of those multi-whatever things that you don't run in a district, but the party just puts you in there and become a senator, a young senator. I don't want that. I really didn't want that because I could have not made a difference there. And I just decided to come, pursue graduate studies. Life threw me a few curveballs, but I'm proud of my decisions. I'm proud of being here. And I still think I can help my students, newer generations, understand the constant changing dynamics in the United States, to understand their neighbor to the south a lot better, that the news are going to help them do. And by that, I may be able to influence a generation of changes that were far away from my individual hands. So I'm still very happy that I took this decision. And now, another fun fact, here comes the colors, right? I love figures with colors, and if I had known the dimensions of the room, I probably would have, increased the font size a little. Don't worry, let me walk you through it. On this end, and I have a pointer right here. Yay! So what we have here is immigrants to the United States. It's the foreign-born population by region of the world from 1930 to 2012. This is from the European continent. And this blue right here, that's 1930. And this turquoise over here is 2012. What this means basically is that sometime around 1930, almost 85%, somewhere around 80 to 85% of the foreign-born population came from Europe. That's the year right after the Great Depression. By 2012, then it's about 11%. Now let's look, of course you have Asia here, there's been a spike there, and other regions. Oh, by the way, you love the classification of other regions. Canada is there and Australia is there. I guess there are people with accepted accents around here, I don't know. But here's, so sad. Anyway, so here's this other one right here. This is Latin America. And in Latin America, what we have is the exact reverse trend, which is 1930, just a few, and constantly, steadily, decade by decade, a little slowdown right here, from 2000 to 2012. Now, foreign-born population from Latin America is somewhere around above 50%. So there's been a reverse as far as trends go. Most of our foreign-born population does no longer comes from Europe. It actually comes from Latin America. It's not the only sending region, but it's the predominant one. That's why today's talk is relatively important. And this is one of the reasons I justify my employment to the university. Now, this is immigrants to the United States, and this is in millions, just to give you an idea, because I gave you an idea at the beginning that we were about 37 million or so by 2010. From Europe in 2003, the bars in blue is 2003, the bars in red is 2012. We have about 5 million people. From Asia, it went up from about 8 to a little over 11. From Latin America, it's a little over 17 million in 2003, and by 2012 it was roughly 20 million. So about 20 million by now, 3 years later, it should be a little higher than that. And now, what's the break within Latin America? Well, before I go there, another fun fact. Because when I ask, well, why do politicians care? Is it just that it scares them that people from other places come here? Normally it doesn't matter, right? Because most Americans that I know will tell you, if you're willing to come here, work hard, this is your home, this is your place. First time I visited the United States was in January of 1994. And I came as a tourist, and I did not overstay my visa. Let's just take that for the record. I came for 7 days, January 10 to January 17. I have a really sick memory every now and then. It was Monday to Monday in 1994. And then for those of you who have got Google access and stuff, check the temperatures in Wausau, Wisconsin. That's where I came. It was frigid. And guess what? I loved it. Anyways, I came to visit a family that had made contact with me in Mexico earlier. Like I met them there, and I've never been outside of Mexico, and I just turned 18, and I saved some money, working hard, and they asked me, my parents asked me, what do you want to do with it? And I'm like, I want to go to America, I want to see it with my own eyes. And the only family I knew at the time was that family, and I called them, would you mind hosting me for 7 days? I have enough for my plane ticket and a few things. And yeah, sure, come over. And that's how I fell in love for the first time with America. I did not go to California, and probably my parents would be very happy about that. I did not go to New York. I actually have never been to New York yet. I was to a small town in the Midwest. It was frigid as it could get. Negative 17. I experienced that my first visit. And that was without the wind chills. And I still loved it. And what I love the most about it is what I still love the most about America. The people. The warmth of the people. And how they embrace this, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but this bloody foreigner. So, what happens then? Is it just the foreigners, as I just said? No, people tend to be very open-hearted. They want to give it a fair shot to anybody that wants to try. Well, it's about the economy, right? Here's where it starts getting dicey for some folks. Let's look at these numbers. These are the top 10, top 20 actually receiving countries of migrant remittances as of 2000. So the money that migrants, whatever they are, send back to their countries of origin. At top of the list, this blue line right here, not that one, this one right here. Ah, by the way, these are billions of US dollars. Yes, I said it right, so let me say it again, because I'm getting, billions of US dollars. Okay? And that's on the B that I wanted, but just to stress it out, okay? So that's India, right there. And here's the second one. You want to take a guess on this one? Mexico. Our neighbor to the south, the country where I was born. Let me tell you a little bit about this line right here because it's a fun fact too. Mexico is a country that depends very heavily on oil. Every now and then, since these, like for the last 6 or 8 years, this money challenges oil revenue as the top source for the country. So I'll come back to that one. But when there's this much at play, of course people start getting like, well, we want a piece of that pie. A little bit that you need to know is that 7 out of 10 in these 20 countries are in Latin America. So not only the US is receiving mostly from Latin America, but a bunch of these countries have become top receivers of remittances from the United States. I don't like that word, I always mess it up. So now, I have given you a hint of why it matters. There's a lot of money on the line. And I used to be very naive. And let me make sure I say that again. I used to. Not anymore. I hope my students remain naive and driven the way they are, because they're hope. I've seen a little too much to be as naive. When it comes to money, I know people, and politicians will make sure that's back on the table somehow. Now, immigrants from Latin America, when you break them down, more than half come from Mexico. That's the left column. And the rest is the rest of the countries. Now, I don't say this in a dismissive way. And trust me when I tell you, coming from Mexico, I have to be very careful when I say this, because then fellows that come from other countries in Latin America would say, oh, here they go, it's the Mexicans, always looking at us like we're less. Yes, those dynamics also play out in other regions of the world, especially with fellows from Central America. They would think that I'm making this claim just to highlight Mexico. This is not why I'm doing it. It's because eventually it's easier to gather data from this country, and I'm going to give you some perspective with that. But just showing you that this is a big chunk and it matters. And I have no reason to believe that the dynamics would be too much different from other countries in Latin America. So while some of the facts I'm going to present to you are only pertaining to Mexico, I have no reason to believe that I cannot generalize from them. So here gives you a breakdown from immigrants from Mexico and Central America in 2008. And as you can see on this little blue bar here, this is Costa Rica, this is El Salvador, this is Guatemala, this is Honduras, this is Mexico, this is Nicaragua, and this is Panama. So when I just look at Mexico and Central America, from this region, the largest bulk comes from Mexico. As a matter of fact, this one, it's in percentage. But I can give you about the rough numbers by 2008, and it's about 11 million for Mexico, and the closest line here, the closest bar here is El Salvador, and that's 1 million. So, it's not to belittle or to make it any less important. I think every human life matters. But when it comes to numbers, and politicians like that, I also need to look at the same numbers that they will use one way or the other. So let me show you something that is very important to me. This is very dear to my heart because this is one of the questions I get the most every time. What about these folks' capacity to speak in English? Sometimes it comes from a good heart, the question comes from a good heart, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't matter, I get the question either way. Every now and then, I tend to have a really good sense of humor, and every now and then when somebody tells me like, you have a really good English, like I better, I've been here for 11 years, and to begin with I had a perfect TOEFL score when I applied for graduate school already, so I better have it. My muscles, they have this memory that, the accent, it has gone a lot smoother, but it's still there. So, let me show you. These bars over here, it's 18 years or younger. This is the foreign-born population of Latinos and their English-speaking ability by age group. And this is data from 2008. So, the blue bar is people that speak only English at home. So, yes, it is true, like, there's no contestation that as far as only English at home, it's about, about 5%. Now, this one is red, this red here is English very well at home. It's mixed with some Spanish, but they speak English very well at home. And I want you to look at that number, because it's almost 60%. Among the youngest, and these are foreign-born, among the youngest foreign-born Latinos, almost 6 out of 10 speak English very well at home. Politicians don't tell you that, do they? No, usually we hear, oh, they don't want to learn the language, and I've heard that. Learning a language, for those of you who know one, or for those of you who have tried, it's really, really difficult. It's not just a bunch of grammar rules, it's not just a bunch of words, it's a whole view of the world and culture. I have been culture shocked just traveling around the United States. I love traveling around the United States, by the way, just so you know. Because on this one, most American-born citizens get a kick out of this one. I love this country so much, and I have my blue old Saturn, 2001, very loyal car, American-made. I have traveled about 110,000 miles in it. I've been to 30 states. 30. I've been to more American states than Mexican states in my life. So, when I say this is home, and my parents get a little like, well, there's a reason for that, or a number of reasons. Anyways, let's keep going at this, because it's important to acknowledge that this is what politicians would want to call the future of America. And among the foreign-born, a majority of them, may I call them a majority? It's almost 6 out of 10, right? They speak English very well at home. And this is what we call first generation. Second generation, this is more drastic. Third generation, the language, the Spanish, is pretty much gone. It has followed the exact same pattern that people from Germany, the Czechs, the Poles, the Italians. Yes, there's a little bit of the nostalgia and the sprinkle of this word or there, or mi amigo and gracias and stuff like that. Trust me when I tell you, I have those students every now and then. They don't speak Spanish. They don't. They try, but they don't. So here, just for your entertainment, yes, of course, this is 18 years and older, so folks like myself. Of course, only English, will still be rare. But by the way, it would have been very rare among German-speaking men or women here in the plains in the 1850s. Actually, let me not go that far back in time. In the 1940s, we still had some towns in our own state that, the cash registers had, the receipts made in German, Czech, and English all together. So here, of course, English less than very well, because these are adults that migrated later in life, and it just simply gets harder to learn the language. Yeah, sure, it's about 75%. That part is true. And as I said, I don't try to side with left or right, I just try to side with the facts. There's the facts. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, politicians' own words, this is the future. And these are foreign born. And 6 out of 10, they're already speaking English very well at home. So, what about their education levels? On this one, I decided to break it. On the left-hand side, you have facts from Mexico. On the right-hand side, you have the other countries. The reason I do this is because some people say, well, people from Mexico are less educated. Sure. But that's not because the ones that come are less educated in general. Let me give you a sad but true fact about the country where I was born. About 11% of the population ever gets a bachelor's degree or equivalent. It's 11% in that country. But of course you'll have those politicians that, and this, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be shy or laying low, I mean, concerns the government itself, and they can come and get me if they want. They'll still say that they've done great improvements. The reality is that 11% of the population having access to a bachelor's degree, only some of which actually matter or are of consequence. It's just a disgrace for a country with the wealth that the country where I was born is. And that's not on the people. I've always said this, that's not on the people, that's on many, many flawed governments that they have had. Some of us have been fortunate enough to escape. So, here we go, and what we're going to see is, in the case of Mexico, of course, almost 40% less than 9th grade. So, and this little bar here, you cannot even see it. It's supposed to be doctorate. It's 0.1%. So I guess I get to say that I'm very unique. And the distribution for other countries in Latin America looks a little more normal, still skewed to the left, which is normal in any country, any given country, but a little less skewed. Now, having shared with you some of these fun facts, I promise you a little bit of theory, why immigration, why the hot button, a few fun facts, and try to, weave a little bit of my own research. This is why I do it. I told you that one of my interests is to bridge some gaps, right? And some of the fears that I hear is like, well, if they're not educated enough, if they don't speak English, what's going to happen to our democracy? By the way, I didn't want to do it here just because sometimes it's too much. But do it on your own. Look what Benjamin Franklin was telling to the Pennsylvania Assembly back in 1753. Just Google it. I'm giving you the year. He addressed the Pennsylvania Assembly in 1753, 23 years before independence. And he was going on a rant against Germans. And that our democracy was really going to be imperiled. Like, we weren't even a nation. But of course, our founding fathers, and we tend to forget this, at the time they felt really British, until the British, told them, you're not really British. Oh, go. And then we had to develop a new identity as Americans. So one of the things that I try to highlight is there real political capital here? Because they're lowly educated, or because they don't speak English very well. I just address some of those things. Some of those things have more basis than others to be said. But the reality that people don't want to say, I think, I may be wrong, and on this one I am going to kind of lay low, but not low enough. It's because most people say, well, if they're Latinos, they're going to vote Democrats. People don't say that, but kind of want to say it, but like, well, why should we bring more of this, right? Of course, they don't go as far as Sean Penn, right? And so I actually laughed. I laughed at the joke. I thought it was funny, but of course some people got offended. Thanks for laughing. I appreciate it. It's my Oscars moment. So let me give you a little bit of my research that actually has tried to get at this question, right? So I'll spare you a little bit of this, but one of the things that people need to think about is that whether we want it or not, the immigrant pool is it's an increasing pool of potential citizens, right? Now, they will have to decide whether to engage or ignore the ebb and flow of political tides. And here's the best thing, one of the things this is why I love America is they don't need to wait until they have the right to vote to participate. We're the longest standing democracy in the world. For one, I'm very proud of being a part of this. I don't have the right to vote, but I can participate. I have a voice, and government is here to listen to whatever I have to say. They may not listen every time, but I have the right to do it. I have the freedom to do it. And it feels awesome. For a person that grew up in a country where there was a hegemonic party dominance, I can tell you how much I love being in a place where I feel free. Of course, my own students sometimes don't even appreciate that because they don't have the perspective, right? As highlighted by the 2008 and 2012 presidential election, Latino immigrant voters can become key players. I'm sorry about that, that's a very bad typo. The kind of typo foreign-born population needs to be careful about. Become key players in battleground states. So some of you will be more familiar with some of these images than others, but really these are the images that put the Latino vote on the map. Most of these folks, they don't even have the right to vote, but they took on the streets in hundreds of thousands all across America. And people were like, oh, what do we do with that? It's funny. The first person that ever asked me this, I was a graduate student at the time, was one of my professors, like, what's going on? I'm like, you know, public demonstrations are fairly common in Latin America. They're rowdy, and they rarely ever get anything done. Because very few people actually pay attention. But people will go out on the street. And here they had the freedom to do that, and it became visible. Of course, immigration reform right around here started becoming really, really red hot. Not the kind of red Nebraska that I like, but red hot, it's funny. And let me give you a few fun facts additional to that. And of course, you know, a little bit of humor. I can't help myself. I'm sorry for that. So let me tell you, these are two national surveys of Latinos, and I'm looking only at foreign-born Latinos. So these are people that were born outside of the United States, that have lived in the United States 3 years or less. And in one of them, 54% report that they already have some kind of partisan attachment to any of the two major parties. So that's half. That's 3 years or less. I believe I used this image in my job talk here in Nebraska, so it must have worked. I still use it. So, here, there's another survey. This is from 2003, and the proportions seem very similar. Now, either the U.S. is really good at recapturing the imagination, the political imagination of these folks anyways, or something is going on. So what I did is I broke down the analysis to 1 year or less. 1 year or less in the United States. And the proportion looks the same in this survey and then 10 points lower on this survey. Let's say that I'm underestimating, and I'm willing to do that. 1 year or less, these folks, 4 out of 10, already feel some kind of leaning, Democrat or Republican. Now, just so you know, remember I told you how many years I've been in the United States? Almost 11, right? Okay, now let me tell you. Remember I also told you I've done everything by the dot, right? So almost 11. Oh, let me give you another fact. I was speaking English very well the moment I crossed the border. Some people may not have liked the way it sounded, but it was grammatically correct English all along. Oh, let me give you another fun fact. For almost 6 years now, I've been teaching Nebraska new generations about American government, which is the test. Actually, the test I'm going to get is a lot easier than the test I give them. But anyways, for 6 years, and for whatever reason it is, our laws still don't permit me to be a citizen yet. Now, I've said this before, folks, I'm a patient man, and God has made sure that I have my tests, because I wasn't patient when I was young. So I said, I'll wait. Why? Because I love this country, I want to be a part of it. But what we need to ask ourselves is, do we really need 10 or 11 years for everybody? Like, is that, I don't know. I really don't know. That's your answer. Mine is different. But the other thing is, that's for a person that did everything by the book. So when somebody didn't do everything by the book, that way it's going to be a lot longer. Anyways, and what I'm showing here is some of these people already have some kind of leaning and maybe would like to participate, right? Now, so immigrants' political engagement is not a rare occurrence, and these were only Latino immigrants. So part of my research has tried to show what drives such political engagement. And of course I love this image because it takes the Latino aspect out of it. It brings back the memories of that old second wave, the one that went through Ellis Island, right? At least what we think it did, because most of the second wave actually didn't. Ellis Island was sort of put in place late in the second wave. And actually there was a big fire, so a lot of the records from Ellis Island were lost forever. So whether or not people came the right way or not, we'll never know. We'll really never know. So is it plausible that along with their cultural baggage, they travel with what I have coined political suitcases? I love this term because it's this close to give me tenure. That literally is my trademark, and when people talk about political suitcases anywhere in the country, they have acknowledged my contribution. So let me tell you a little bit in political terms about an immigrant from Mexico that I had an opportunity to interview a long time ago. And in his own words, he said, "In Mexico, I consider myself to the left of the scale, especially about social issues. Here," he meant in the US, "I would never be a Republican." So this is one of those folks that some people are really afraid of, okay? Sure. Just like I would never be a panista there in Mexico. I'll explain this in a second. Republican, and this is the part that actually opened my eyes wide open. Republicans do not represent my interests here. And even though I have doubts about the Democrats, and here he did say this, because they resemble the PRI. The PRI is the party that kept power in Mexico for 70 years straight. And by the way, they're back in power now. And they were back in power by popular demand, which is sad, but it is what it is. Hey, even democracies produce a Hitler every now and then. So, I cannot find another option. Look at that last statement. I cannot find another option. So, there's a few things to, kind of walk away with it. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I'll show you more evidence of this. If there's a big voting bloc favoring the Democrats currently among the Latino population, it's not set in stone. It's highly contextual. Now, if anybody cares about that, I don't. I do the research and that's all I do. But if anybody cares about that, what they need to do is just come up with better outreach strategies. That's on them, not on these folks. Let me make it a little more visual for you. Because so now we have a scale left to right. Left to right. It's going to be the social issues this guy was talking about. We have the border up north. God bless America, right here. We have south of the border, we have Mexico. We have the two main parties. We have one that, on the left, one that's on the right. But when a guy like the one I interviewed looks at that, says, look, I would never be this, I would never be a Republican, just the same way I would never be a panista, sorry about that. I kind of have to go here, but I have doubts because they resemble these guys, and by the way, these matching colors are no coincidence. Let me give you another fun fact. Just it's a small parenthesis, folks, but this was the party that ruled for 70 years, and by law, they banned any other political party to wear the colors of the flag. So, well, they basically didn't have any opposition in Congress. They ruled for almost 70 years with literally almost 90% of the seats in the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies. But of course it wasn't a Soviet thing, and we had it right south. But anyways, that's just me. I need to lay low. Okay, so here we go. This guy was saying I would be voting for this. This would be scary, right? Because that guy actually would vote left of the Democrats. Ha! Ha! I know, that's scary. For most folks. I know, I'm sorry. But I'm just translating what the guy said. Okay, so, is that something people should really worry about? That was an interview. And I don't back out. Because some people would say, like, why are you using that? You're trying to put people at ease. That's not putting people at ease. Let me show you what should put people at ease. These two following figures. One, this is just with people from Mexico. These are foreign-born people from Mexico in the United States. And what I showed, and this is already published, it was already sanctioned by the scientific community, if these light gray bars represent that they're new arrivals, so they've spent 1 year or less in the United States. And this is their predicted probability of saying that they want to participate in elections in the United States. If they didn't have any partisan attachment in Mexico, their probability of saying that they want to participate in elections is about 30%. If they have some attachment with the Mexican parties, that probability is about 70%. It's more than double. And that's 1 year or less in the United States. So what I believe, and I've said this, is driving it, is that they had some kind of partisan attachment and they had a better view of political parties in general and the political process in general, and they transfer it. I call it the import, the political showcase. And to our benefit, if they thought that the Mexican government, with all of its flaws, was a good, relatively good thing, they will import that and they will be willing to work with the American government. And here's my caveat about the very long time that people say, oh, they need to learn about America. They need to spend a lot of time here. Let me show you this. I calculated the same probabilities for a person without partisan attachment after 17 years of stay. The chances improved from 30 to 40%. Of course there's growth. It's not bad. 10% increase, 17 years of your life. Hey, there's something going on. Here's for a partisan. It goes almost to 90%, but after 17 years, basically the story is the same. If they were likely to vote in the beginning, they will be likely to vote any time after that. Should we waste that? I know the political parties are wasting time. Let me give you another fun fact. You want to know the number of pieces of mail I've ever received in my almost 11 years of stay in the United States from either the Democrats or the Republicans? Zero. Exactly. Exactly zero. Now that's probably a blessing, to be honest, but here's the thing. It is funny because the day, and I really pray to God that's soon in the horizon, that I go and I swear the oath of citizenship of the United States, which I'm really waiting an ear to do. When I walk out of the Capitol, there's going to be a booth for the Democrats, a booth for the Republicans. Oh, please come sign here. That day, I'm going to laugh. I will say, I'm not signing. I will, maybe, I don't know. I encourage my students to participate because this is very important. But I do resent the fact, and I'm a very well-educated person, that only when I matter as a vote, they'll come to me? Really? So, just food for thought. Anyways, let me give you one that actually made some waves, and even Rush Limbaugh mentioned on the radio show. He got it wrong, though. This is the one. I brought it with colors. And basically what I'm showing you here is actually not just one interview, but a bunch of interviews. This is a nationally representative sample of Mexicans living in the United States. And this is their ideological preference, going from left to right, in a scale from 1 to 10. Normally in the US we measure as 1 to 7, and it's not because it's more incomplete, it's just we have different scales. But here is the exact same predicted probability of saying that they want to participate in US elections. Let me show you this. It's gonna, I really hope, it's really gonna blow your mind. So the red line, it's the red hot arrivals, the new arrivals, like 1 year or less. If you're on the left, your predicted probability of saying you want to vote is right around 37%. Okay, so about a third. I don't know how many of you like Vegas, but those odds are not that good. Because follow that red line, follow the red line right now, all the way to people that are on the far end of the right of the ideological spectrum. The probability is near 1. 1 in probabilities means near certainty. Well, 1 means certainty. Near 1 means near certainty. That means that if I got this right, this is already published in the Journal of Electoral Studies in 2013. That was sanctioned by the scientific community as well. If you are a person of Mexican heritage, first generation, and you stand on the right of the ideological spectrum, you are 3 times more likely to be interested in voting in American elections than if you stand on the left. Rush Limbaugh heard about it and still complained about it. He said, "This is a bunch of California liberals." All right, I'll take the publicity. He said my name right, he said the University of Nebraska right, and I got some downloads, about 300 downloads. Okay, I'll take my moment of fame. Now, you might be wondering how many people lean on the left or on the right in Mexico. Maybe you're telling me, well, yes, they're more likely, but they're very few. Let me just show you one last, I'll go into final reflections, and we can have some of the conversations that you have. I have some really cool things here, right here. That's a distribution. On the blue is specifically asked about the United States. On the red, specifically asked about Mexico, but they're already living in the US. The reason I did that is because some people said, well, no, they're not thinking about the US. I'm showing what they think of one setting, it's pretty much translates to the other one. Anyways, here's the distribution, folks. About 10% of them are on the left, on the far left. About 4 out of 10 are in the dead center. And about 30%, so 1 in 3, are on the far left, on the far right. In other words, the right outweighs the left 3 times to 1. And if you think that politics in America, it's pretty center, people don't want to acknowledge that, but for most people around the world, Democrats look center-left, Republicans look center-right. Every now and then some folks try really, really hard to push that one. But for the most part, it's very centric. Very centric. So, these folks are at play. These may not be at play, but they're not like, they're 1 in 10. And these ones are being wasted. Right here. It's published. It's been out there for 2 years. Of course, I got a couple of phone calls, and there's a couple of phone calls of people that are interested in that. I don't know what they will do with that, and I honestly don't care. All I want to say is, look, this whole idea that it's set in stone, that they're going to vote Democratic, it's not, by my account, in scientific terms, that doesn't fly. So, one of the things that I would like to have as a reflection is, to me, one can confidently say that immigrants cross nation borders with import political suitcases. To me, as I said, I showed most of the evidence from Mexico, but I don't have any reason to believe thus far that it wouldn't happen for folks from Central America or the rest of Latin America, Eastern Europe for that matter. And these immigrants imported pre-migration political predispositions seem to play a critical role in shaping these individuals' political attitudes and behaviors once in the United States. So we don't need to fully resocialize them. We just need to take advantage of the political capital that there is. And the other one is just, I won't have all the answers. I never had, I will never pretend I do. But that's one thing that my students like about me. I don't tell them I have all the answers. I don't. I mean, one day, hopefully many, many years from now, I will go meet the one that has all the answers and the way I see it. But I don't. I certainly don't. So, should we keep missing out on this political capital? One final fun fact. I couldn't cram it here. I know, I was on a time, and I knew I may go a little bit past, but I wanted to make it count. But I tried to keep it as close as 1 hour. So you don't think that I made it in a Mexican time, right? So I published another chapter. It's a book chapter in a book in Mexico. And of course, because it's published in Mexico and because it's in Spanish, that's a good thing when a scholar can write in different languages and reach different audiences, right? Well, the thing is, it's not going to get a lot of coverage here. But there's a fun fact there. The people that Mexico sends to the United States is politically more active on average than the ones that stay. The loss is for those who stay. The loss is for the country that can't offer enough opportunities for them. But as I say in the conclusions of that chapter, one of the tragic losses is that they will become part of a sort of political limbo, because they will not matter anymore there except for the money they send, and they won't matter here for at least 10 years, like myself. I know they're not taking advantage of them down there, but at the end of the day, as much as I love Mexico and as much as I love the country where I was born and where my folks still live, that's Mexico's loss. Should it be ours? I know the government in Mexico doesn't care. I know that. Should ours not care? I'm going to close with this image. It has nothing to do with Latinos. But I took this picture. This was my first visit to the capital. It was in August of last year. And I was like a little child looking at the White House, and our Congress, and the Supreme Court, and the wonders that we built in this country. And when I went to this relatively new monument, I've been a fan, however you want to call it, an admirer of Dr. Martin Luther King's speeches since I was a teenager. And it was partly because of my religious leanings. But I turned around and I saw that image of that kid giving thanks, praying, I'm not sure. I'll never know, but I snapped the photograph. Because it says, and it's hard to read here, but it says, out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. No matter how many times I've been told, and every now and then I've been told that this is not my country, or that I will never be able to speak English in an accent that's acceptable to everybody around here. To be honest, if I could, I would love to have a southern accent. I love to fall folks, and you know, wouldn't it crack up people like, where are you from? From the South. That's exactly where I'm from, right? Deep South. So, anyways, I just happen to believe this is what America is all about. And as I'm not the same naive kid that first came to Wisconsin, but I still believe this is a nation about hope. And we have had the capacity to reinvent ourselves once and again to still be the best nation, I think, in the face of this earth. And of course my parents will feel very disappointed when I say that. But I mean it. Now, whether most of my American fellows decide to believe me, whether or not I'm sincere, that's up to you all.